In a quiet suburban neighborhood, nestled between rows of identical houses, a new family moved into Maple Ridge, Ohio. A family of 3, standing under a colorless sky, with everything around them so neatly arranged that it almost felt as though they didn't belong. The house was freshly painted in a neutral beige, with perfect bushes and a pristine lawn, the kind of place where everyone greeted each other politely from a distance. But for 10-year-old Jaden Collins, this place felt different. As he stood there, hands stuffed deep into his hoodie pockets, scanning the unfamiliar neighborhood, he could feel the weight of the silence surrounding him. He wasn't nervous, but there was something about this place, something unsettling. It was his 3rd move, the 3rd city in as many years, and though he tried to shake off the discomfort, it lingered. Maybe it was the fact that he was older now. Or maybe it was the fact that, here in this small town, there was no view of the Johnson Space Center from his bedroom window, no mention of the incredible things his father was doing at NASA. There was just an ocean of unfamiliar faces, and not a single one that looked like him. Jaden had always been proud of his dad. The man he knew wasn't just any ordinary dad. He was a part of something massive, the Artemis program, the mission to return to the moon. Jaden had his dad's NASA shirt, pictures of him in training, and he couldn't wait to share it with his new classmates. But on his first day at Willow Creek Elementary, things didn't go as planned. When Jaden stood up to present about his father's work at NASA for Career Day, Mrs. Blake, the teacher, didn't believe him. She called him a liar, dismissing him with a laugh that stung harder than he could have imagined. No one stood up for him. The other kids laughed. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that she didn't even ask. She didn't ask about his dad's job. She didn't try to understand. She just decided. Because in her mind, a kid like Jaden, a black kid from Ohio, could never be telling the truth about something as grand as NASA. But she was wrong. Stay with us to hear what happens next. This is the story of how Jaden stood up, how his family fought back, and how one teacher learned the power of listening before making assumptions. Welcome to Acts of Kindness Stories. Jaden's first day at Willow Creek Elementary wasn't what he expected. It wasn't the typical nerves of being the new kid in town. It was the sense that he was being looked at differently. A room full of strangers, all eyes on him as he tried to find his place. Some glanced up when he walked in, but most didn't. The polite, distant smiles were all he got, and the kids sat in their comfortable cliques, leaving him with nowhere to sit but alone. When it came time to introduce himself, Jaden didn't think much of it. He'd done it before, moving from city to city, from school to school, learning how to introduce himself with as much confidence as he could muster. But this time it was different. The teacher, Mrs. Blake, didn't exactly make him feel welcome. Her smile was a bit too tight, her tone too formal. "Jaden Collins just moved here from Houston," she said, barely glancing up. "He'll be joining us for the rest of the year." The rest of the class didn't say much. Some gave half-hearted waves. Others didn't even look up. As the morning dragged on, Jaden did his best to focus. He answered questions when he was called on, even when his hand shot up and all eyes turned to him. But when he raised his hand to talk about the solar system, Mrs. Blake blinked in surprise. "That's correct," she said, but there was something in her voice that made him feel like she hadn't expected him to know the answer. And then she moved on. No praise, no acknowledgement, just silence. By lunchtime, the cafeteria buzzed with the chatter of kids who had already formed their cliques. Jaden walked past a group of boys at one table. One of them asked where he was from. "Houston," Jaden answered quietly. "You like football?" the boy asked. "Not really," Jaden said, unsure of how else to respond. Another kid snorted. "Figures," he muttered. Jaden ate alone that day, picking at his food while staring at the floor. The other kids seemed to have no interest in him. But what stung the most was that he hadn't said anything wrong. His father was a part of NASA. He didn't need to explain it further. When he got home, his mother asked how school had gone. He shrugged, telling her it was fine and retreating to his room. There, lying among the unpacked boxes, Jaden pulled out a folder from his backpack. The folder was labeled Career Day. Inside, he had printed photos of his father at NASA. There was a picture of his dad in astronaut training gear, another of him floating inside the zero-gravity plane, and one with Jaden beside him, proudly holding his NASA ID. Jaden's father wasn't a full astronaut yet, but he was in the advanced training program for Artemis, part of the team that would eventually take humans to the moon. It was the most important thing in Jaden's life, and he was excited to share it with everyone. The next day, Jaden stayed up late, preparing his presentation for Career Day. He had everything ready: photos, charts, a detailed explanation of the Artemis mission, and his NASA shirt that his dad had given him from the Artemis media event. His mother packed his folder carefully, and his father smiled proudly when he saw how prepared Jaden was. "That's my boy," he said before wishing him good luck. On Career Day, Jaden was ready to show everyone who his father was and what he did. But things didn't go as he hoped. He stood in front of the class, holding his folder with pride. He started, "My dad is an astronaut in the NASA Artemis program. He's training for a future lunar mission." The room went silent. Some students leaned forward. A boy in the back snickered, and a few others tried to hide their laughter. But Jaden pushed on undeterred. "He's in training right now, working with engineers and other astronauts. He's training for extended space flights and surface operations," he said, showing the next photo, this one of his dad floating inside the zero-gravity plane. But then Mrs. Blake stepped forward. Her arms crossed over her cardigan, her face unreadable. She looked at Jaden with something close to pity. "We did say to keep things realistic today," she said, her voice smooth, but with an edge that cut through Jaden's confidence. "I am being realistic," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I'm sure your father has a very interesting job," she said. "But there's no need to embellish. Astronauts live in places like Houston or Florida. We're in Ohio. Maybe next time you can tell us what he really does." The words hit Jaden like a punch to the stomach. His face burned, his hands trembled. The room buzzed with whispers. The laughter was quieter now, but it was there, a shadow hanging over him. Mrs. Blake didn't let him speak again. "That's enough, Jaden," she said, cutting him off. "You can sit down now." Jaden felt the weight of the room pressing down on him. He walked back to his desk, folder still open, the pictures of his father half raised in his hand. He sat down slowly, hoping the chair wouldn't disappear beneath him. The rest of the class went on as normal. Kids gave their presentations, and Mrs. Blake gave her usual polite claps. Jaden didn't hear any of it. His ears buzzed with the sound of his own heart racing. His face still burning. His mother's face hardened. "She said that. She called you a liar." Jaden nodded. His father looked at his wife, his expression darkening. "It's not right," his mother said. "She humiliated him." His father took a deep breath. "It's not just a mistake," he said quietly. "This is something bigger." The following days felt like a slow, painful echo. School became a place Jaden couldn't bear to be. The halls, once just bland and bright, now felt sterile. The laughter followed him, whispers in the hallway. "NASA boy," someone said in the lunch line. "Liar," someone else muttered. Jaden started sitting alone at the far table by the window, staring out at the sky, wishing for something else. Mrs. Blake never changed. She didn't meet his eyes. She didn't call on him in class, even when he knew the answers. Jaden stopped raising his hand. He stopped answering questions. The boy who had once loved science and space now withdrew. His desk became messy, his handwriting smaller, his energy gone. Home, his parents noticed. "What happened?" his mother asked gently one evening. "You're not yourself." Jaden didn't answer. His father tried too, but Jaden just shrugged and mumbled, "I'm fine." That night, after his parents went to bed, his father sat at the kitchen table, staring at his tablet, lost in thought. "We need to do something," his mother said, pacing. "We can't just let this slide. Jaden won't bounce back if we don't stand up for him." His father finally spoke. "I'll handle it," he said quietly. "I'll request a meeting. I'll talk to her face to face." His mother was firm. "I'm going with you." The next day, his father sent an email to Mrs. Blake, polite but firm. He explained who he was and what had happened. He asked for a meeting during the upcoming parent-teacher conferences. Mrs. Blake's response came later. "Thank you for reaching out. I'd be happy to meet during conferences." The day of the conference arrived, and Jaden's father and mother showed up early. His mother was dressed sharply, the quiet fire in her eyes unmistakable. His father was calm, collected, but determined. They sat down in front of Mrs. Blake, the same professional smile on her face, but this time the tension was palpable. "Mr. and Mrs. Collins, thank you for coming," Mrs. Blake said, sitting across from them, trying to maintain control. But Jaden's father wasn't going to let her control this conversation. "My son came home from school upset and humiliated," he said, his voice steady but firm. "You called him a liar in front of the entire class. You didn't ask. You didn't check. You didn't try to understand. You just decided." Mrs. Blake shifted uncomfortably in her seat. "I simply reminded the class that we should focus on real professions," she said, her voice defensive. "You treated our son like a liar," his father said, his voice growing more intense. "You didn't ask for clarification. You just assumed that a 10-year-old black boy talking about NASA must be making it up." There was a long silence. Mrs. Blake didn't respond immediately. But then, she looked down at the folder on Jaden's father's lap. The NASA badge, the photos, the official documents that proved everything Jaden had said. "I should have asked," Mrs. Blake said quietly. "I should have checked." Jaden's father nodded. "You should have. But you didn't." Mrs. Blake looked up at them. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice softer now. "I made a mistake. I should have listened. I'll apologize to Jaden." But Jaden's mother wasn't finished. "You owe him more than just a private apology," she said firmly. "You humiliated him in front of the class. You need to correct it in front of everyone, the same way you did when you dismissed him." Mrs. Blake nodded slowly. "I understand." The conversation continued, and the next day, Mrs. Blake made her apology to Jaden in front of the class, and the atmosphere began to shift. The whispers died down. The laughter faded. Things weren't perfect, but they were better. Jaden was heard, and he knew his voice mattered. But the story wasn't over. Jaden's father wasn't content with just fixing the issue with Mrs. Blake. He wanted to make sure something bigger came out of this. He wanted the other kids to know that there was more to the world than what they saw in their small, sheltered town. He asked Mrs. Blake if he could come in and give a presentation. A real presentation. Not just to fix what had gone wrong, but to show them all something bigger, something that would change the way they saw the world. Mrs. Blake agreed. And that Friday, Jaden's father stood in front of the class, showing them the wonders of space and the Artemis mission. He told them about his journey, how he had faced doubts and broken barriers, and how anyone, no matter where they came from, could reach the stars. The kids listened. They asked questions. They were engaged. They saw the truth, not just about Jaden's dad, but about the world beyond their small town. And for Jaden, that moment was everything. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. He knew there would be more challenges, more obstacles. But he had learned something important. When you speak your truth, when you stand up for what's right, you give others the chance to see the world in a different way. You make a space for yourself, even when the world tries to tell you there isn't one. And slowly, the world around him began to shift. After Jaden's father's presentation, something in the classroom shifted. For the first time, Jaden wasn't just the new kid with a story. He was a part of something bigger, something that mattered. The whispers and laughter that had followed him like a shadow for weeks were now replaced by respect. His classmates asked questions, eager to learn more about space, about the Artemis mission, and about the journey his father had taken to get to where he was. Mrs. Blake, for the first time, didn't just look at Jaden with indifference. She looked at him with understanding. The space his father carved out for him in that classroom wasn't just about proving a point. It was about giving others the chance to see beyond their own small worlds. It was about teaching them that truth, hard as it may be, was always worth standing up for. Jaden didn't need to explain himself anymore. His father had shown up for him, not just to defend him but to make the world a little more open, a little more accepting. Days after the presentation, Jaden began to feel different. He didn't just walk through the halls with the weight of silence pressing down on him. He stood tall. He answered questions with confidence. He found himself at the center of a new group of friends who saw him for who he truly was. Not a NASA boy, not a liar, but a bright, determined kid with a passion for something bigger than any of them could imagine. The Space Club, which started as a small idea, grew into something that would last, something Jaden could be proud of. And all of it happened because one person decided to listen, to truly listen, and to change. This story is a reminder that sometimes it only takes one voice to break through the noise. One person who stands up and says, "This is my truth." It's about more than just proving others wrong. It's about creating a space where everyone feels like they belong, no matter where they come from. The next time you're faced with a challenge, remember Jaden's story. Stand up. Speak out. Your voice matters. If Jaden's story moved you, make sure to hit that like button and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a comment below and tell us what you think about the impact of standing up for what's right. Don't forget to subscribe to Acts of Kindness Stories and help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Together we can inspire kindness, understanding, and a world where everyone is seen for who they truly are. Thanks for watching.